Today on CityCast Boise, with local elections coming up and a new zoning code in place, you may be hearing the theory that more apartments equal more crime a lot more lately. Rachel Spacek from the Idaho Statesman is here to share what the numbers actually say, what law enforcement thinks, and why this complaint just won't seem to go away. It's Tuesday, October 24th. I'm Emma Arnold, and this is what Boise's talking about. Hi, Rachel. Welcome back.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So you wrote this article about what new data shows on the correlation between apartments and crime. Give us the background on this. Does the development of apartments lead to more crime?
I think anyone who works in the field of housing and multifamily development is kind of, already knows this and is maybe sick of hearing the comment that apartments bring more crime to an area. Basically my findings of this data confirmed that there's no through line between apartment development, apartments opening up for rents, and crime increasing. And so how I found that is I got a bunch of data from the Boise Police Department, Nampa Police Department, and Meridian. And I found a couple apartment complexes, 9 apartment complexes in those cities. And I requested the crime rates for a couple years before the apartments opened and then a couple years after. And like I said, there was no through line of crime increasing whenever apartments opened.
So where does this even come from? Where does this concern come from? Because I feel like like you said, we've heard this a lot.
Yeah, I think it's just NIMBYism, like not in my backyard, is kind of alive and well in Boise and the Treasure Valley. One person I talked to said a lot of people who are in these single family home subdivisions are scared of change. They are fearful of people who are renters because, as we know, a lot of us can't afford to purchase a house. So people with lower incomes often are renters. And I think there's a misconception and even a prejudice that people with lower incomes are more likely to commit crimes. And my findings is that's just not true.
That's so interesting because for the last few years before we moved into this house in West Boise, which we rent, but before that, I lived in these apartments, and lower income apartments at the time, they were very cheap. They are no longer very cheap. And my very safe apartment complex, big apartment complex, mostly refugees and single moms. And we really looked out for each other. But sometimes in that neighborhood, which was mostly, single family homes, when I would be talking to somebody at the kids' school or other parents, and when I would tell them that I live in those apartments, they would say, ugh, oh gosh, it's so scary over there. And I lived there a long time and really only saw like a couple different times scary things happen. Not even scary, like somebody's car got robbed once. And we mostly like really looked out for each other. And it's really interesting because like you're saying, there is this prejudice against renters and against the poor. I mean, obviously, not just in Boise, our entire country has that issue. But what are local police departments seeing? Like, do they feel like there's more crime in these apartments?
No, I talked to a Nampa police captain and Meridian, and the Meridian police chief basically said that he knows about the comments about the misconception that apartments lead to higher crime, and they are just not seeing that. And he has, gotten letters from residents saying that this apartment is going to bring all of this crime. And he said he's kind of equally sick of this misconception that apartments bring more crime. The Nampa police lieutenant I talked to, he looked at the same data that I got, and he said there's really, not a through line that says apartments increase crime. He did say, it kind of depends on the apartment complex and, things happen. But yeah, I would say at least the 2 departments I talked to basically share the same finding that I had, is that, there's not anything definitive to say that apartments bring crime to an area.
Are there any apartment complexes in the Treasure Valley that have actually seen a decrease in crime around the area?
Yes. So that's kind of what I ran into is I kind of had talked to people in housing who've said, there's this misconception and it makes it really hard to get apartments and kind of multifamily development approved in city council meetings. So I've kind of thought that might be what the data had showed, but I got like totally a mix. In fact, even some that had a decrease. So for example, Adair Manor apartments, which are specifically affordable housing. So they have a certain number of units that are dedicated to people who make below the area median income. And the neighborhood saw a 6% decrease in crime from 2018 to 2020, and the apartments opened in 2019. So for that year, they had a decrease in crime. So that was one. And then the Ashen River, that's a townhome apartment rental complex. It's kind of off of River Street. We might have all kind of driven past it before. There are these really nice looking townhomes. They saw a 13% decrease in crime from 2016 to 2021, and they opened in 2019. So we've seen a couple that have decreases. And there was a Meridian apartment complex that had a decrease. So yeah, we've seen multiple decreases.
What about increases? Have there been apartment areas or neighborhoods that have seen increases, though?
Yeah, one of the increases was, I think you kind of know that like cluster of apartment complexes downtown. One I looked at, it's called the Vanguard. It's on Front Street, and they saw an increase in crime when the apartment opened up, a 14% increase. But again, I talked to the Boise and Meridian police, and, some of these increases was hard to tell, especially in the downtown area, because downtown is where large groups of people gather and, there's nightlife down there and things happen with crimes downtown, regardless of who's living in the apartment. So that was kind of one explanation for the increase that I heard.
So where does this idea that apartments bring crime, where does it come from?
I talked to Deanna Watson and Jillian Patterson. They are both at the Boise City Ada County Housing Authorities, and they operate some affordable housing complexes themselves and just are kind of, housing advocates. And Deanna basically said that she thinks it's just this myth that gets repeated from generation to generation. Younger people in Boise, maybe young families, heard their parents saying apartments bring crime, or were taught to kind of be fearful of people who are less financially stable than they are. So it just kind of is that a bit of a cycle I've heard. And I think it also comes from when, the federal government was putting money toward some housing. They were not always functioning the best, and it was kind of like slums, quote unquote. And Boise doesn't have any of those, but I think other cities did. And that idea of that there's like a place where poor people have subsidized rents and are all in one place, and that's scary. I think people are also repeating that, but we just don't have that in Boise.
What interested you in deciding to dig so deep into this topic? Because truly, your records requests here must have just been a total beast. It looks like you sifted through so much data. Why were you so interested in reporting on this story?
As a city government reporter, I sit in a lot of city council meetings, and I've been doing this for 4 years now in the Valley, and I've heard lots of people say this, repeat this narrative of apartments bringing an increase in crime. And I just kind of heard it so much. And I had also heard on my own from others that wasn't the case. And I just kind of felt like there was a disconnect between the housing advocates and some of the developers I was talking to, and then the people I heard during these city council meetings who just kind of repeated these claims. And I was just really interested in learning about if that was the case. And I think that we had a lot of data, and I cited it in my story. There's some data from Arizona and other places that show that apartment development does not lead to crime, but we didn't really have anything specific to Boise and Meridian and Nampa. And so I really kind of wanted to dig in and just let the data speak for itself, because you can talk to people who are really educated, like Deanna Watson, but people will just kind of think that she has an agenda. But people can't argue with the data, or I hope they can't. So that's really why I wanted to do the story.
Well, it was super interesting, and we really appreciate you digging into so many numbers and getting a clear picture for us. Rachel, thank you so much for making time for us. It's always a delight to see you.
Thank you so much, Emma. Likewise.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, check out our website for online guides to the Treasure Valley and beyond. We'll be back tomorrow morning for a fun chat about Idaho GOP infighting. Bye.